Hey folks, welcome to Market Technical Analysis by InTheMoneyStocks.com, your leader in pure technical analysis, avoiding all that Wall Street hype. Today, Tuesday, August 12th, 2008. Well, we saw the pullback in the markets that we were anticipating in yesterday's video, folks. As you recall, we talked about a major extension move in this market, and it just seemed to be getting a little overdone to the upside. And the market in general needs to pull back from any extension move like we saw, but in addition, we saw multiple signals. In fact, about 5 of 7 signals that we calculate were pointing to a drop today. If we had seen another update, it would have actually upped it to 6 of 7, if not 7 of 7 indicators. But because that didn't happen, obviously, we didn't get to check on whether it was 6 or 7 of those indicators pointing to a fall. But nonetheless, you got the fall based on 5 of 7 indicators and calculations of our proprietary techniques and analysis tools. And we're going to kind of look at today's basic analysis video. We're going to touch on the market's move down today. What happened? Was it on heavy volume? Was it on light volume? What's oil doing? What's gold doing? Because there's a lot of things out there that are coming to fruition, and there's really been a collapse in commodity prices that I want to touch on over the last month and a half. And, you know, going back to it, we were there pumping the short on oil right around 145 and saying, you know, when everyone else was pointing towards $150, $200 and saying the demand was going to continue to rock and roll and just zap up oil, we were there saying, don't believe the hype, guys. This is going to be a drop in oil. And sure enough, look at this fall in oil, as oil has come down from $147 a barrel to 112-ish, give or take. Unbelievable, guys, on commodity prices. And gold, too. I'm going to show you a chart of the GLD, and it's basically fallen off the charts. But before we get into that, let's just talk about today's market activity. Volume today, very, very light. And when we talk about a pullback in the markets on very light volume, that's exactly what you wanted to see. All right? If you're a bullish player, if you like the market going up, then today's action is actually a bullish sign for you. Now, trust me, we're not necessarily saying tomorrow's going to be a big up day by any stretch, and I want to preface that by saying we actually do believe that there may be some more downside on this market. Tomorrow's Whipsaw Wednesday. Now, Whipsaw Wednesday is the Wednesday before options expiration, and the whole week is known for being whipsaw and major moves both ways, but primarily that Wednesday is known for being volatile and moving both ways in massive amounts leading into the options expiration Friday. All right, it's where the big money is going to push the little guy around and try to get them to sell out of their calls or puts and try to make as much money off of the market as possible in this situation. So today we saw a light volume pullback, and again, as I mentioned, that's somewhat of a bullish sign in the market. And you can see we were actually up a little bit early, and this is pre-market, 7 a.m., 8 a.m. in the morning. And then really right around 8:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, you saw the market start to trend lower. And by no stretch was it anything major. And you saw the market trending down, and here the market's down a little bit, and then you see a bounce back over lunchtime, kind of just trading in a sideways pattern. And really from this point, and notice the lines here, folks, really you're staying in a general trading range for most of the day, most of the midday session. Ever since 9:30, which is right here when the market opens, you see us trade in a basic pattern in a channel, and really never broke out to the upside or the downside until right around 2:30. Now, the interesting thing is here, the market seemed to be getting a bid on the drop in oil today. All right, you saw oil basically trading down $1 and change today on the session. But the key here is, as soon as oil closed at 2:30, which was right here, and oil was kind of out of the way, sellers came in the market. And it wasn't because oil was spiking, obviously, because it was closed. This is more a situation where people said, or the sentiment was, financials are getting hit a little bit today. You had some JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley negative news out there in the market. Things have just run way too far, way too fast, as we mentioned in yesterday's video, to look for a pullback, and that's really what you saw in the market. So a combination of financials and commodities getting slammed took the markets down in a pretty sudden event in the early to mid-afternoon session. Right around 2:30 to 3 o'clock, the market started to dump out. Then right around 3:30, we saw a little bit of a bounce-back effect here. All right? So this is really the main event of the day right here, where we saw financials drop. And I'm going to show you the XLF, because this is the financial ETF. And you can see from the high yesterday, before the sell-off in the early afternoon session, it's quite a fall on these financials. They have taken a hit, but am I surprised? No. I mean, this is what we've been expecting in the video, talking about it yesterday, and even the day before. Look at this monstrous move on this XLF, and this is the daily XLF chart now, which is, again, the financials. You basically had a situation where the financials have made a huge run. This is a huge run in a small amount of time, and to see a little pullback right into this necktie of the 50 moving average and the 20 is nothing short of expected, if I would say so myself. Alright, so keep that in mind, folks, is that you're getting a normal pullback. It's on light volume. That's what you somewhat want to see here in the markets. And now let's talk a little bit about what we're going to expect in this market. But before I do what we're going to expect over the next few days, let's talk a little bit about the USO. The USO, we talk about our key levels here, folks. We had talked about this gap fill area, which was a key area, and then we bounced a little bit intraday right around there, and now we're talking about the next level of support. And I want to put the 200 moving average in here so we can all see that as well. Here's the 200 moving average. So you have major support on the USO, which is the basic oil contract. You know, you talk about the ETF for oil, and that's basically what you're looking at right there. But notice how it's coinciding virtually with the low of this point over here of support. All right, look at how it's kind of inching up. So this is going to be very, very solid support in our opinion on oil. Right around this low, maybe a little break of that low right into the 200 moving average. Now, is oil oversold now? Absolutely it is, in the near term. I'm not talking about if you look at the yearly chart or the daily chart over the last year or two. It's not necessarily oversold there. This is somewhat of a pullback. But if you scan the last month and a half to 2 months of this chart, it is oversold. Just from this point down here, very oversold. So you're coming into major, major support areas on oil. And we do anticipate a bounce. Notice this is the basic support range of oil right here. You can see we're right on top of the first line, which is a calculated point. The second line is more of a technical point based on the charts, and the bottom of this point and the 200 moving average. So anywhere on here we're expecting a bounce. It could come down, it could hit the 200 and pierce it and then bounce, or you could see a bounce as early as tomorrow in oil. All right, but it does look like it's on the horizon. Okay, so keep that in mind, folks, is that we are starting to see signals that oil may get a near-term bounce. And again, we're talking about a near-term bounce, so let me be clear on that. You're talking about a $5, $10 bounce in oil before the next move down in oil. All right, and that next move down, we do anticipate possibly going to 100, and that's one thing I remember pointing out about a month and a half ago when oil was at 145, calling for $100 oil by the elections. Now, I guess I was off in the fact that it looks like it could happen a lot sooner, but back then people were skeptical of that 100 oil call, I'll tell you that. Alright, the other thing I want to point out is the GLD. Now, the GLD, look at this cliff dive on the GLD. Now, this is getting to be near-term oversold as well. We're beginning to see signs that this may be finding a little bit of a bottom support here on the GLD. We'll watch for a bounce over the next week or two in this. It could see a little bit of lower. There's a little bit of support coming around $80, $79.50 on the GLD. It could test that level, but you're also at a key support here that you touched on the downside here before bouncing off. You have a nice little tail formation there as well that could signal a little bit of a bounce coming in, so we'll watch that tomorrow, folks, all right? So again, the key here, folks, is that we saw the pullback today we anticipated. We do think that there could be a little more whipsaw pullback over the next day or so, setting up another positive move in this market after we have a little bit more of a pullback pause in this market. Okay, so we'll keep you posted on that. And we do have a turn date coming in September that we will release in a couple weeks, though. It's not a major event yet. It's going to be a major event come September, so be ready for that and continue to follow the videos as we unveil that more and more. Okay, guys? So watch for that turn date, which will be looking more and more like early September, and we'll release it to the exact day or the exact couple days that we think it'll happen, along with which direction the markets will seem to go according to our analysis and our proprietary techniques. All right? So again, watch for the gold issue there. UNG, we've talked about this one in multiple videos. I mean, look at this chart here on natural gas. It's at support right now. Again, we could be looking at a bounce play shortly on this, and we'll continue to watch for that as well. That's the natural gas ETF daily chart, UNG. Now, let's talk about the NASDAQ and the S&P futures here. On the NASDAQ, one of the reasons we also believed that the NASDAQ was going to sell off today, or at least see a little resistance, was it pierced the 200 moving average to the upside. Alright, and anytime you have a move like this is a lot of resistance. First hit of the 200 is almost always a pullback, and it held true today. You got a nice little pullback today in the NASDAQ. Not a huge drop in the NASDAQ, but a nice one nonetheless. The overall index is the Dow was down about 140, the NASDAQ just down about 10, and the S&P was down about 16. So 1% drops, or 1.2% drops on the Dow and the S&P, while the NASDAQ was just down fractionally. But either way, good pullback on the NASDAQ off that resistance of the 200. The next area you're going to look for, and I'm just going to draw these lines in here. if we, on the upside, you're going to look for this line right here, major support resistance on the upside. On the downside, you're going to look for continued consolidation, which could yield another move up to this point. Now, if you start to pull back, you're going to look for the necktie to form between the 50 moving average here and the 20 here. The 20 will move up into that 50, and if we pull back hard into that, that should be a solid support line right around here, give or take, and we'll have to draw that out as the charts continue to form. On the futures, let's take a quick look at the futures. Remember this point on the upside. This is going to be the next major resistance on the upside if we continue up, which will be right into this line. You can see how we're connecting points here. On the downside, you can draw general support lines right into this range, which basically mirrors the 20 moving average. So you can look for right around here to be good support on the S&P futures. On the SPY, we'll take a quick look, and the same thing applies. You're seeing consolidation off this extension move here, which is a no-brainer, as we had called for that today. Other than that, come join the chat room. Learn the technicals, guys. This is what it's all about. Learn the market, learn the technicals, join the swing trade alerts, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.